So I'm Yannis Hamilakis. I'm an archaeologist. I was educated here in Greece for my BA, and then I went to the UK for my master's and PhD. And I stayed in the UK and I worked until 2016 for 20 years. I was teaching at the University of Wales and then University of Southampton. And since 2016, I've been a professor of modern Greek studies and archaeology, or archaeology and modern Greek studies, at Brown University. I consider archaeology to be the study of the relationship between materiality and temporality. Within that definition, one can study prehistory, what we call prehistory, or can study the present. And there is such a thing called the archaeology of the present. In fact, in addition to my other projects, which I'm going to mention in a minute, I also study the present here in Greece, and more specifically, the archaeology of border crossing and contemporary migration. So I have a project on the island of Lesbos, where I study what remnants have been created through that process of crossing from Turkey into Greece, from the global south to the global north in a sense, and how that specific experience of border crossing produces specific material realities. Now, I also excavate. I have a project in Thessaly, and I co-direct the excavation of a fascinating archaeological site. The site is called Κουτρουλού Μαγούλα. The primary phase of that site is the Neolithic, the early and the middle Neolithic. And I'm fascinated by that site because it shows social organization, communities, prior to the development of the market and prior to the development of the nation state. As an archaeologist, of course, working in Greece, you cannot escape the social and political role of archaeologists. So in addition to my work on the Neolithic and the Bronze Age, I have been for many years now working on how archaeology produces national imagination, produces national identity, how it connects to the process of colonization and colonialism. And that is a parallel stream in my own work that has produced several books and articles. The most recent project I decided to talk to you about has to do with the Athenian Acropolis, a monument that is known to people all over the world, a monument that is both a national symbol and a global signifier of Western modernity. We know, historians, archaeologists, others have shown that the Acropolis has been a palimpsest of different moments, different histories, different cultures, and yet it was cleansed to be presented as an exclusively or almost exclusively classical monument. So these processes of purification, these processes of cleansing started in the early 19th century, started with the foundation of the state in the 1830s. And I would say they continue all the way to the present with modifications, with changes, with kind of different logics at times. So this new project is the making of the Acropolis from the 1830s to the present. A new angle that I have adopted in this new work is to do with the processes of race and racialization. We have to think of the moment of the foundation of the state, but also the decades and perhaps a century or so prior to that moment of the foundation of the state. But the War of Independence, we now know, was a global moment, was an event and a process that actually connected Greece to the world as a whole, to the whole kind of to the process of what was happening all over the world, from the Caribbean to the Mediterranean and beyond. And that was a moment in which logics of racialization, processes of race, and also challenges to the concept of race and to the concept of racialization and to concepts of whiteness were happening all over. I want to focus on two or three things in relation to that. One is the revolution in Haiti that started in the late 18th and continued in the early 19th century. The most important perhaps event at the time, because it was the event that challenged explicitly the European order, and especially in relation to racial order and racialization. It was the first successful revolution of enslaved people in the Caribbean. And these were the people who were actually mobilizing discourses and ideas that became famous with the French Revolution. So ideas about liberty, ideas about equality, ideas about freedom were played out and performed by people who were seen, and they were, for the French, enslaved people. I want to add two more elements, however, that actually make, I think, more clear why ideas around race and racialization and whiteness are crucial in understanding the transformation of the site. The one is to do with the demographic composition of the various communities of the town or the city of Athens, the moment when this process of purification and transformation started. So we know of the Christian, Greek-speaking population, we know of the Ottoman population, and of course they were on their way out after the successful War of Independence and what we call the Revolution of 1821. But we do not necessarily know, most people don't know that in addition to those two populations, there were other people, and some of them actually connected especially to the Acropolis. I'm referring to the people from Africa who were brought by Ottomans, in most cases as enslaved people, and some of them, or communities of them, actually lived very, very close to the Acropolis. So if you read some of the Athenian folkloristic writers like Kamburoglu, you would see that in the northern slopes of the Acropolis, and especially in the area around Arios Pagos, there was a neighborhood or a settlement by African people. Well, as I said, were brought by Ottomans as enslaved. There is a toponym there which I think is worth mentioning. The toponym is Kara Suyu. Now it's Turkish and it means black water. And one explanation is that it is called black water. There was a spring there. It was called black water because of that connection to the African people. Sometimes it's called Ethiopians, people from Ethiopia, who lived there. So you have in the shadow of the Acropolis, a community of people who comes from Africa, who came from Africa against their will, and lived there possibly for centuries. A final, very, very brief moment is to do with the beginning of the process of purification. And I want to mention here a name, and the name is Leo von Klenze. Now, Leo von Klenze was the most famous neoclassical architect in the 19th century. He was the architect of Ludwig of Bavaria, who was the father of the first king of Greece, King Otto. He, Leo von Klenze, was the person who started the process of transformation of the Acropolis. He was the person who came to Athens just for a brief period of a few months in 1834 and produced a detailed memorandum on what is to happen with that monument. He said it has to stop being a fortress, all the troops have to leave the site, and it has to be transformed into an archaeological site. At the same time, he was writing discourses and essays about race. And he had penned an essay, more or less at the same time, on the links between the Germans and the Greeks as both Aryan people and as both tightly connected within that white European order. So you could see how these things come together, the historical context, the processes of enslavement of people, the movement of people from Africa to Athens, people who live very close to the Acropolis, and the hierarchical order, hierarchy of value, and racialized logic in the minds of the people, including Leo von Klenze, who were instrumental in the transformation of the site. One facet that has become crucial for researchers in recent decades is the power of representations of the country, of people, and of its monuments. We now realize that, in fact, the construction of Greekness is tightly connected to the plethora of representations of the country, primarily by non-Greek, by mostly Western people. The Benaki is crucial in that sense because it holds such an enormous wealth of visual representations in different media, in different forms. And it allows us to actually study this process in detail. Now, representations can be studied in many different ways, can be studied as sources of information, and there is that dimension too. What do they depict? But more importantly, representations, as we know, are materializations of a gaze. They're materializations of a specific way of looking at things, ways of seeing. Very often, as we know, Greekness is presented, especially and internalized by people who live in the country, as the African-American theoretician W.B. Du Bois is called double consciousness. That is, seeing yourself through the eyes of the other. So all these depictions and representations in visual media, in addition to the discourses, have produced an image of the country that very often is being internalized by people in the country. And they see themselves through the eyes of the other and through the depictions that are produced through the eyes of the other. So that is a process of colonization. So these two processes beyond iconographic analysis as information content, that is, as materializations of a gaze and as productions of specific colonial logic, need to be incorporated in our analysis. For our occasion, I have chosen two specific representations, very different, but also very similar in some ways. So these are two paintings by different people produced at different moments. The first one on the top is produced by Müller, Rudolf Müller, in the 1863. It shows the Acropolis. It shows the Pnyx as well on the foreground, and of course what dominates this composition is the rock of the Acropolis and its monuments. Now, I want to juxtapose this representation to the other one here, which shows also the Acropolis, but it shows primarily the actual town itself. Athens is depicted here as a real town, even a real city, with its buildings, with its mosques, with its various temples, including classical temples, with its mural walls and other fortifications. But these are embedded within a broader depiction of a landscape that includes the Acropolis, but it does not exclude the depictions of modern life. So this one is earlier. It was made in 1790. Whereas the other one was 1863, so much earlier. And the paradox is that in the first one I talked about, Athens was rapidly developing as a European capital, with many modern buildings, with some infrastructure, with some or even proto-industrial kind of developments. And yet all these are erased. Whereas in the other one, earlier, much earlier, with only what we consider as kind of the medieval and post-medieval kind of nucleus of the city are portrayed. So the gaze here is different. The gaze is very different, and here the conclusion you could reach is that the more Athens is becoming a modern city, the more at least this painter, but also others and photographers, want to erase the modern city because they want to project primarily the classical idea. The classical sublime is what it emerges from this mid or late 19th century representation compared to the other, which is an 18th century representation. Here, the 18th century representation partakes more of the tradition of the ruin as was developed in the 17th and 18th centuries with the foliage and everything else. Whereas the other one partakes of the Orientalist gaze that sees an empty land, sees a terra nullius, a land primarily defined by classical antiquity. It is important, I think, for the various communities of the country of Greece, but also of the world, the visitors. Let's not forget that we are talking about at least 3 or more million visitors that visit this monument every year. It is important for all these people of diverse background to understand that they visit not only a monument that is connected to the classical moment, to the classical civilization, to the glorification of Western heritage, but also a moment that connects to various other global processes and also to various other communities, racial communities, ethnic communities, religious communities. How many of the millions of visitors who come to the Acropolis every year and walk up the western slope of the Propylaea towards the summit know that they're walking on Muslim graves? How many do they know that on that locality there used to be a very large and important Muslim cemetery? I'm talking about an extensive cemetery that was founded more or less around the 15th century AD and lasted until the foundation of the Greek state, until the major works of rearrangement of the site, and I would call them the major works of erasing of all other non-classical traces. That cemetery included many mausolea. It also included many different types of graves. It was erased, it was destroyed, at least the surface finds, and the whole area was landscaped with the planting of olive trees, with the planting of pine trees, and today there are no signs of it. There are no visible signs of it. There are no information panels, there are no inscriptions and no other evidence for the visitor to actually know that that extremely important monument of a different faith, of a different culture, did in fact exist on the western slope of the Acropolis. And yet, materiality has the annoying habit to resist, to endure, to last despite our efforts to erase it. So first in around 2000, when the Greek state was engaged in a major plan called the unification of the archaeological sites, some of those graves resurfaced by accident. And again, in 2022, in the process of digging up for a drainage work, our colleagues at the Archaeological Service located more than 20 of those Islamic Muslim graves again. So the bones, the bodies, the human beings that they were interned in that area, several of them are still there and waiting for us to devise a very systematic and extensive and ethically appropriate research project to actually investigate them properly and learn about that specific monument. And I want to add one more final thing. I would like to urge the visitors to the Acropolis, when they go up on site and return after their visit, on their way down, as they climb down the stairs by the Propylaea, to take a look on their side, on their right side. And there they will see a metal cage constructed by the Archaeological Service, and they would see inside it several fragmented architectural parts, and if they actually look carefully, they will spot many fragments from the headstones of that Muslim cemetery with a distinctive shape, with, in some cases, sculptural decoration. It's more likely that these architectural parts, these funerary stelae, were in fact carved out of ancient marble. Another indication of the constant reworking of the materiality of antiquity by the subsequent people in the subsequent centuries. And yet these unmarked traces of that important cemetery deserve to be seen, deserve to be spotted, deserve to be noticed by the millions of visitors of the Acropolis. So my recommendation is to change our understanding, shift our understanding of the cultural and social and political significance of this specific monument. And this has implications for the present beyond heritage itself. So even if the site itself is still portrayed primarily as a classical site, different readings, different tours, different understandings of the site can allow us to foreground all these other connections, cultural, social, and others. But the implications beyond heritage is to do with the communities that live in Greece today and also follow the understanding of the world as a whole. So for example, we know that Greece is becoming again a multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multiracial reality. So how do the various communities, for example, that come from Africa, connect or do not connect with the monument as is today? All these historical, archaeological, and other knowledges can become a crucial component in connecting these communities to the monument, in encouraging them to see themselves also on the Acropolis, not only the classical heritage they read in the books, but also a heritage that was global from early on, a heritage that was connected to people from Africa, people from Asia, people from many different countries around the world. So that is a way through which heritage and materiality and material culture can become a crucial component in producing a multi-ethnic and multicultural and multiracial reality in Greece today.